Welcome to Rep Matters, where we bring a diverse perspective to tech and venture capital. We sat down with some of Canada's most interesting entrepreneurs and investors in order to understand their journeys, the impacts they hope to have moving forward, and how to improve equity and inclusion for the Black community in tech and VC. As well as being leaders in their respective fields, these entrepreneurs and investors all have something else in common. They're Black. Their lived experience as Black Canadians has helped shape their path to success, and we made sure to dive into what it means to thrive in such a homogeneous ecosystem. I hope you enjoy. Today we have the pioneering Brent Ho-Young, co-founder and CEO of Dream Payments, a technology company that provides cloud payment solutions to financial institutions and insurance companies, enabling them to provide frictionless digital and mobile payment experiences to their end consumers. Dream Payments has raised over $60 million in capital and counting from top VC firms such as our very own Real Ventures. Earlier in his career, Brent developed North America's first mobile money transfer service, which was used by Western Union as early as 2007. His continued success with Dream Payments is a testament to his leadership and innovation, and I'm so happy to have him on the show with us today. Brent, welcome to Rep Matters. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me here. This is a pleasure.
So can you talk to us about what Dream Payments does and what makes you stand out as leaders in fintech?
Essentially what Dream is, we're an API and essentially a payments as a service platform. And North America's largest banks and insurance companies, they use our technology to provide digital and mobile payment services to their end customers. And so as an example, right, if you think of insurance carriers, across the world, over $1 trillion worth of claims are paid via checks each year. And using Dream's technology, an insurance carrier is able to easily send a digital payment to an end customer in time of claim. So we're helping, in insurance carriers and large financial institutions really digitize the payments that they provide to their end business customers.
That's amazing. Your leadership team is extremely diverse. How does that affect your company?
Yeah, I think it's a blessing and an asset, right? With a diverse leadership team, we get a variety of perspectives and inputs that really helps us do a few things. One, I think look at the problems that we're solving, whether it be for a large bank or insurance carriers or their end customers. I think the diversity of experience and insight and wisdom, if you will, really helps us better serve both our clients and our customers.
And so as the leader, as the top dog, as the CEO, how do you find balance between sort of day-to-day tasks that keep you operationally sound and things that may be a little bit more abstract but may benefit the company down the road?
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge, right? To balance both sort of the tactical short-term things that, say, a customer, a client, an employee, your shareholders may want to need, and that you've got to turn around really quickly to keep the business moving forward, versus sort of the longer-term strategic directions that you really have to focus on. And I think, ultimately, I like to say there's like a super easy answer, but you just really have to put the time in and make time, right? And so part of that would be, a lot of the sort of the tactical short-term things really take up a lot of my day. So many times I have to wake up early or spend time. I usually carve out quite a bit of time on Sundays as well for more strategic items that I'm really wanting to, spend some cycles on and really think through. So I would say it's a balance. I don't know if I've got it perfectly lined up. I don't know if any of us leaders do, but you do have to carve out time, because if not, you may be just running and putting a lot of muscle into things versus putting some thought and your brain power as well too. So it's important to balance out, and you just really try to make the time, I would say.
Interesting. And so I had another question on sort of mental health and well-being that was more related to your employees, but I guess I want to ask you, how do you maintain an optimal state in terms of your mental health and your well-being so that you can continue to lead your company forward?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think perspective is key, right? Because as large of a responsibility that building and guiding a company is, you do have to keep it in perspective, right? I have a family, and I think focusing on my family, spending time with them, that really helps sort of put things in alignment, right? Because I think as founders, as entrepreneurs, sometimes we think that the business is everything, but the business is important. But if you have something that is as important or more important when you think about kind of really your family, at least in my perspective, or my case, right, that really helps balances out things. Because ultimately, if my family is healthy and they're engaged, I'm only going to feel better about myself, and be sort of energized and free to really work on the business, and not be so maybe torn up on a given business issue or whatnot, right? So I think stress is just inherently part of business, or working as an entrepreneur and leading teams as well. But I think it's really having other outlets that are as important, or more important than the business. And for me, it's family.
So I want to pivot towards the Black experience in tech and VC, and start off by asking you sort of what's your ethnic background, and whether you identify mainly with that, or with your nationality, or with your skin color.
Yeah, so maybe a bit of everything, I think. So I was born in Canada, so I'm a proud Canadian. My father, he's Jamaican and Chinese, Jamaican Chinese. My mother's Jamaican as well. They immigrated to Canada. Um, but I end of the day, I present and represent as a Black Canadian, right? So I was blessed to be born in what I say is the best country on earth. I'm Black, I'm Canadian, and also I've got a great ancestry coming from the blended background of Jamaican and Chinese as well too.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
lots going on, but
that's amazing.
it's I feel very special, if you will.
Can you speak any Mandarin?
No, 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 not no, no, not
Listen, I
that
lived in
talented.
China for a year and I still can't speak any Mandarin, so
There you go. There you go.
um, so what drew you to tech? You're an engineer. That's your background. What drew you into that?
Yeah, so I think in general, so I mean, I think I've been an entrepreneur for a long time. I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and in going into engineering, and really getting immersed in technology, I realized that technology can be a fantastic way to solve problems, right? And as being an entrepreneur first, I'm really using technology to solve problems, whether it be in insurance, and helping claimants receive their funds quickly when they need it most, or helping financial institutions provide solutions to businesses that help businesses get paid fast and collect funds, and help them really thrive as well too. So I think technology, to me, and what's exciting about it, it's almost really magical, right? You can use technology to solve hard problems for many others, and so that's one of the reasons why I've really embraced technology, and I really, really value having these skill sets, if you will.
That's amazing. And did you have any mentors that looked like you growing up, or anyone that, not necessarily mentors, but someone that you could look up to and be like, hey, I want to be like that person who actually looked like you?
Yeah, I mean, not so much in technology and engineering. I just, I didn't really have families in my people in my community that were in tech or in engineering or whatnot. But I'd say my mother has been, probably the biggest influence on me. She was an immigrant from Jamaica, had a hard time, coming to Canada at that time, during probably the 60s and things like that. But, seeing her, not even having a high school education, really have to grind her way, right, and fight through, and rise through her career and whatnot. So that's been a real gave a lot of influence and mentorship to me, that hey, you know what, you do have to, if you work hard, you can be successful, even with not starting maybe right at the starting line, like so many other people do. So that'd probably be my number one mentor, if you will.
So to piggyback off that, how much of your success as an entrepreneur would you attribute to your lived experience as a Black Canadian?
Yeah, I mean, I think most successful entrepreneurs, right? You have to be resilient. You have to be ready to outwork, the competition, if you will. And growing up in a black and immigrant household, and not having things handed to you, right? You learn really quickly, right? That nothing is given to you. You most likely aren't going to have an uncle or a friend of the family just hand over an opportunity to you. So you're going to have to work, and you might have to work doubly hard. So I think having that sort of definitely the immigrant experience, black, a whole mix of factors as well, has really helped me as an entrepreneur, right? In terms of knowing that, look, you have the opportunity, and it's really to capitalize on that opportunity. You're going to have to work, and it's not going to be easy. And that was something that we learned in our family, in our community growing up, and I think it's beneficial to me every day I walk into work.
Yeah, and so speaking of that opportunity, did that create any pressure for you as a black person, especially when you're at a stage where you're, probably one of the only black people in certain rooms or in certain meetings, etc.? Does that create any pressure for you to represent either Jamaicans or the black community or whatever the case may be?
I think the pressure is really just pressure to succeed, right? As an entrepreneur and one that may have, investors and shareholders, the number one the number one thing you're thinking about, or at least myself, is really to, can you make this successful? Can you solve some difficult problems, and can you, deliver on the promise that you've made to, your investors, your shareholders, your employees for that matter, right? So number one, right? So there's the weight there being an entrepreneur, and then I would think the what would say the added benefit, if you will, is that I do feel proud of my accomplishments, whether with Dream or the last company I founded that became very successful as well too. Is that you can be an example to community, and show that, okay, hey, by the hard work you put in and the success that you are achieving, you can be a motivator, to show that, hey, you know what, if you put the effort in, and if you get a little fortune thrown your way, but you can be successful. And so I think it's really the pressure there as an entrepreneur, with the benefit that, hey, there are others behind you that you can help motivate, maybe even mentor, but ultimately have a positive impact on their experience as they are navigating their careers as well.
All right. And so, throughout your career trajectory, where did you see the pain points being, and where would you say they are for other black entrepreneurs?
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, I think number one would be access to capital, right? It can be challenging in general to access capital, right? Whether that be venture capital or a bank loan or something like that, right? And in general, even if you've got the best idea in the world, to obtain capital, a lot of times it takes more than just a great idea, right? It's how well known are you, or how strong your network is as well too. So that can be very, very problematic for not just black, but people of color, or females who are very, very underrepresented in terms of in tech, at least being venture backed as well too. So that probably is the number one problem I would say facing people of color as they are looking to be entrepreneurs and building companies.
Building off that, what do you think the most impactful things that LPs can do? LPs and other investors, I'd say, GPs, what can they do to help the black community, in terms of entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I mean, I think LPs, right, the individuals that are backing the different venture firms, they have a lot of influence, a lot of power, right? And they have to wield that, and they have to put the challenge in front of the venture firms that they're backing, right? That, hey, look, at a minimum, the LP wants to see, the GP or the venture funds, investing in founders that at the minimum are representative of the communities that the venture firms are operating in, right? I'm based in Toronto, and with the with such a strong representation of people of color and visible minorities in Toronto, there's no reason for venture firms not to be challenged to diversify the entrepreneurs that they're investing in, right? And LPs have the ability, right? Because they've got the capital and they are funding the funders, if you will. So I think it is incumbent on LPs that if they're interested in, really helping diversify and grow the tech industry, that they are demanding that, the venture funds are backing people of color and females.
So when you think of LPs and the whole venture structure, and you also think of capitalism in general, how responsible do you think companies and corporations actually are in terms of social change? Right? This is something that's come up, as recently as this year with Coinbase. Their CEO made an announcement that, they were not going to take on any social causes, and you have the opposite with Twitter, where they take on a lot of social causes. Where do you think the balance lies?
Yeah, I mean, I think the way I would look at it is that companies don't operate in a vacuum, right? Companies operate in the communities that they serve, and for a company to be successful, they have to have fantastic people. They have to have working great communities. There has to be society in general has to be strong, and so I think it's to ask companies, particularly those that are of size, if you will, to ask them or mandate them to really try to be number one, be reflective of the communities that they serve. I don't think that is a far-reaching ask, right? We if you look at companies that are diverse, that companies that have diverse boards as well, whether it be gender or race or whatever it may be, right? I think the studies say that they do tend to perform better, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's companies, companies that operate in Canada benefit from operating in probably the best country on earth, one of the most stable with the best public health systems as well.
Yeah.
And so to encourage those companies to address maybe systemic barriers and to reflect the communities that they serve, I think that is it's a good thing.
Definitely. And I think the growth that we're seeing in terms of the tech industry here in Canada is definitely a testament, to the Canadian environment to begin with. You keep on saying how great of an environment it is, and it really is. And seeing that growth in the tech industry right now, I want you to, say whether or not you feel like there's a cost of lost opportunity for the Black community if we are not on board while this system is growing and thriving here in Canada.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think if if tech is not embracing and including Black people or whichever community it may be, I think that industry is short-sighted and can't realize its full potential, right? If you don't have the full mosaic of the communities you serve, what solutions are being missed, what problems aren't being identified, where a person of color may be able to come and provide their insight from their experience as well too. I absolutely think we are missing opportunities by not including all voices to the table.
So what do you think the cost of lost opportunity is for the Black community if we're not integrated in the tech and venture capital ecosystems that are generating, large amounts of wealth for Canadians?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good one. I mean, ultimately, I think the Black community, they're brilliant, they're very innovative, and I think we're seeing more and more people within the community adopting tech. And ultimately, if there's not opportunities, say within Canada, I think those smart people will go to other markets, whether it be, I mean, the U.S. has some challenges right now, but I've spent a lot of time working in tech in the U.S., through various states and things like that, where there were the opportunities, right? So I think, ultimately we are seeing an awakening of many communities, many countries that are really embracing the contributions that Black people can have or Black people do have. And so I think if the country excludes a community, is not as inclusive, then we will see the flight of some very talented young people in tech. And it doesn't have to be, right? We have brilliant people, we have great companies. Bringing them together, that does not have to be an insurmountable challenge.
That brings sort of two things up to mind for me. One being your personal story with your parents being immigrants, and your ability to then create more wealth for your family via tech, right? Um, I think that that's very interesting how quickly things can shift, right? You went to college, you got an engineering degree, you were able to create based off of that, and you're creating wealth and a better life for your family. And I guess, do you sometimes reflect on that, on what impact that could have for the rest of the Black community in terms of, closing the wealth gap and different things like that, and growth within the Black community in Canada?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I look at my family's journey, right? Literally, I remember as a kid going back to Jamaica, and there wasn't even running water in the house that my mom grew up in, right? We would literally go to the river to bathe in the river while while we were traveling there, and I was like, wow, what's happening here? But to see that in sort of what is it, a generation or two generations to where we were, myself and my brother, the achievements that we've had, and so just realizing, right, with being in a country like Canada, with the opportunities and the education that's here, seeing tech, and where tech has the ability to be one of the best meritocracies, from an industry perspective, right? Where look, if you understand tech, if you have the willingness to learn to code, learn to design, learn to test or QA, then you can build a career that can generate material wealth for yourself and your family and stuff like that. That's just phenomenal. And in terms of wealth creation, I've seen it within my own life, my own family. And, I've been a backer of some really fantastic startups as an angel. Yeah. So just seeing where we've come from as a family, and seeing where, I've got young daughters, and, wanting to build a strong foundation for them that they can springboard and maybe hire me one day in the future. That's it's exciting, but yeah.
Yeah, and you also touched on having worked south of the border as well. Did you
Yeah.
notice any difference in terms of ease of access to capital between, Canada and the US? Is it easier in one place or the other?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good question, particularly in these times. But for my experience, starting my last company in the state in the U.S. in Texas, actually, what I found is that in general, the U.S. business generally moves much faster than Canada. Canadians can be, or the business environment, much more conservative, slower. I don't think that's saying anything too revealing, if you will. So, and as well, venture capital, much more venture capital, although Canada's catching up, but much more quickly to be deployed. But it has its own challenges, its own biases and whatnot. But I think what I would say is that for any entrepreneur starting out, particularly if you are, underrepresented in tech, whether that be Black, gender, whatever it may be, you should look to cast your net. Don't just include Canada, but you can look to the U.S. because there are backers in the U.S. looking to back, entrepreneurs wherever they may be, and so it makes sense if you've got a strong idea, a strong team, to look to south of the border, as well as Canada, as you're looking to find your investments, because finding landing investors is difficult in the best of times. This pandemic is making things probably a little bit more challenging as well. So very important to look for capital wherever it may be.
So my next question was going to be what advice you had for entrepreneurs trying to raise money in Canada, and that was,
Yeah.
I guess, that was kind of my your answer, unless you have more.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, I think it's looking beyond the border, if you will, right? Because there's just so much potential capital available, uh, not just in Canada, but in the U.S., maybe even international as well. Um, I would say, even potentially before you have your idea, you know what problem you're going to solve and the company that you want to build. It's building your network, right? Because in my experience investors favor investing in people within their network or there may be some familiarity with, and so building your network so you're not starting from scratch. And that VC or that investor might not write your check, but they might introduce you to someone, and you're not coming in cold, right? Because as a VC, as an investor, you've got a hard job, right? You're making bets really early, a lot of the times on unproven entrepreneurs, unproven ideas. And so if you can um, connect with investors prior to sort of the actual pitch, it only bodes well for you, right? Because ultimately there's some familiarity with you, and you are probably putting yourself in a much better position than just coming in cold.
So I'm a black entrepreneur going into a pitch meeting, and you have 60 seconds to hype me up or give me advice specifically on how to pitch. Go.
So you got 60 seconds on how to pitch. I think you've got to be very, very clear, right? Very, and break it down into very simple terms. And ideally, if you can make sure to communicate in a way that the problem can be understood really well, and if that problem is something that the investor may have been faced with in their past, and they've been looking for a solution for that, or they can understand how a solution can be relevant. I think that's clear. I think many times as entrepreneurs, we are so anxious to tell everything about it, and but you've got to really be simple because the VC is pitched day to day with so many things. It's hard for them to even remember what you said, and so you've got to be crystal clear in terms of what the problem is, how you're going to solve it, and why you're uniquely positioned to be able to solve it. It's only 60 seconds, right? So
Yeah.
all you're trying to do is get the next conversation, invite it to the next conversation. So be clear, be compelling and passionate, right? I would say that's probably the bigger thing too, is be able to convey how passionate you are about the topic and why you're trying to solve it as well.
So how do you think the VC and tech communities are actually positioned in order to create social change, towards anti-black racism? Do you feel like they're positioned or not?
Yeah, I mean, I think they have a position of power, right? And I think they have to be very intentful in terms of backing founders that are a true representation of the communities that the investors or the VCs are operating in, right? And so I think it's the algebra that they're using in terms of who they're backing. I think it has to include, not exclusively, but include looking at of our portfolio. Do we want to see a diverse portfolio of and not even diverse, an inclusive portfolio, right? Because I think VCs can do fantastic research that companies that are inclusive do perform better, and so they should want that to see that. Hey, look, their founders there's gender diversity, there's racial diversity, sexual orientation, all of that, right? So they have the power, and they've got to be willing to say that. Okay, hey, it is about financial returns, but also can we be impactful to the communities and societies in multiple different ways? And I think helping and encouraging or backing companies that are inclusive. It's just something that they need to do.
How do you want to impact the world in the next 5 to 10 years?
I want to see change, right? If I really personalize it into my family, right? I've got two daughters, and in about 10 years, they're going to be entering sort of university, and pretty shortly afterwards, entering into the workforce. I'm not saying that I want everything to be solved. That would be great, but I want to make sure that what they have equal footing in terms of the vocations they pursue, or if it's in tech, they are they feel that they have an equal opportunity to access venture funding, in a much better way than it is today, right? Or it was 20 years ago, right? So, in terms of making sure that I'm doing things, whether it be backing other founders and, seeing them, play it forward as well too, by backing on the founders that are representative of the community, and, bridging, whether it be gender or racial divides and things like that. That's important to me. And it's important to see that I'm helping society, or my community, to make it easier for my daughters, and by proxy to others around us.
So, what's your favorite book in terms of anti-racism or Black history, and why?
Yeah, you know what? I think so. For me, my ultimate favorite would be the Audacity of Hope by Barack Obama. And I don't necessarily would say that's anti-racism, but for me, seeing a strong Black leader, that has been inspirational to me. And I think it can be an inspiration to anyone, regardless of color, or creed, or whatnot, right? So, I mean, I think that's been a go-to book for myself, and I think for many of us, particularly in today's environment, a couple of days away from the U.S. election as well, it's a great read that I'd highly recommend.
Yeah, I haven't read it yet, so maybe I should dive into that.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
So, we're gonna do the devil's advocate round. The devil's advocate
Hmm.
round is basically where I say a statement or ask a question, and you have, let's say, 30 seconds to respond to that. Cool?
Hmm. Hmm.
Awesome. So the first one is, why does representation matter?
Okay, representation matters because if we want to have a society that is at its best, it has to be inclusive, right? We can't have blind spots. We have to make sure that all voices are heard, and without representation, you are missing voices. You are missing some of the best and brightest as well, and we can never reach the pinnacle of success that will better us all. So it absolutely does matter.
All right. Next one is, there is no racism in Canada.
Ridiculous, right? So I think it's obvious, whether it be against Black people, whether against historically against Indigenous people, historically against Indigenous people. There is absolutely racism in Canada. It may be subtle at times, maybe it's not as overt as other places around the world, but there is absolutely racism in the country. And if you don't acknowledge it, then you can't help solve it. And I think most Canadians are great people, and looking out for other Canadians, and acknowledging that, hey, Canada can be better, and racism is just one of the issues in the country that has to be addressed. And I believe in this country, and I believe it has been getting better and better every generation.
That might be my favorite response so far.
Good
um,
stuff.
Next one is, why do we have to be talking about race all the time? Why can't we all just get along?
Yeah, I mean, I think those aren't mutually exclusive, right? I mean, we can get along, but then we can recognize that there's, racial disparities that are causing um, uh, different ethnicities, different colors, different creeds to be excluded, particularly from leadership positions, right? It's about, okay, hey, there's a problem here with race, just like there may be a problem with gender or sexual orientation. And to be talking about things is to be trying to solve areas that are not optimal, right? And by tackling them has no means that we aren't getting along, or we're not moving things ahead, right? So race is a problem, and we all know it, and we're working to solve it. And by solving it, we're just creating a better company, community, and country.
Yeah, I totally believe that. And I totally believe that. So last one is, we don't have a racism issue. There is just little to no black talent in tech.
So I think that this is the latter part of that sentence, right? There is a little to no black talent in tech, right? So let's focus on how do we improve that? How do we make sure that the tech industry is representative of our community? And if you don't believe that there's racism, okay, fine, you don't believe that, but it's obvious that there's not enough black talent. So we need everyone at the table to be looking at how do we solve for making sure that that talent that we have with black people, with people of color in our communities, it's being reflected in our companies, right? And ultimately, if it's racism, if it's comes down to wealth gap, whatever it may be, we have to all admit that there is a problem here and working to solve it.
Great. Well, that wraps things up for today. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're a very busy man. I appreciate you joining us on Rep Matters, and I hope we'll talk again soon.
Yeah, no, and thanks again, Phil, and your entire production team there. You guys are first class, and I do applaud the efforts that you're doing here, right? Because it's not easy, and I'm sure it's been tough to lasso everyone to be at the table to do these interviews and stuff like that. But
yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, well done. Well done.
Thanks for watching Rep Matters. Keep the conversation going by liking, commenting, and especially sharing our videos with your community. Stay updated by following us on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter, and subscribing to our YouTube channel. See you next time.